In this video, I'm going to be going over the Algebra 2 skill table tutorial. This is the student's individual skill table. With this tool, students are able to determine their grades, generate theoretical test values, gather information and resources, and many other things. This tool is designed as a prototype to replace Canvas for Algebra 2 course and should be emailed out on a regular basis. All of the embedded resources and values are automatically updated in real time. There's no need to wait for the system to update at midnight or for students to scramble to find assignments, resources, or their old tests. So let's go over how to read the skill table and how to utilize this best and most effectively going forward in Algebra 2. The table is chunked by tests. With each chunk, the concepts themselves are broken down by what are called skills. So as an example, chapter 1 might be on something called elementary level arithmetic, the stuff we learned in grade school. 1.01 represent the first skill in chapter 1, and that might be something like addition. 1.02 would be the second skill in chapter 1, and it might represent something like subtraction. And then 1.03 would be the third skill in chapter 1, and it might represent something like multiplication. So the 1 point tells you what chapter you're in chapter 1, and then everything comes after the decimal tells you what section you're in. So chapter 1 is all about elementary level arithmetic in this example, and each section is about a subsection of that overall concept, like addition, subtraction, multiplication. You could also throw a division in there if you wanted to. Now, these chapters might be color coded, like the picture in front of you right now. I have chapter 0 and the first part of chapter 1. They both appear to be what is pink in color, and those represent a shared outcome. I'll be going over that later in the video once we get to outcomes and how these values are scored. Next, a student's overall first and second semester grades can be found on the left side of the table underneath grade S1 and grade S2 respectively. For further information regarding Design Tech's grading policy, the titles themselves are hyperlinked to our school's CBL grading practices and policy. So if you select either grade S1 or grade S2, both of these are hyperlinked to an external document that is a D-Tech document that goes through the breakdown on how to achieve whatever grade you want in not just Algebra 2, but in all D-Tech courses. The next thing is the honors checkbox. It'll remain unchecked until the student has met all of the requirements for honors credit. So that would mean passing chapters 11 and 12, as well as the cumulative final. These things can only really be achieved at the end of the curriculum, but honors credit will retroactively change both semesters to honors. So students cannot earn honors during the first semester of Algebra 2. They can only earn it at the end of second semester, the second semester's material. But once they complete that, it'll change first semester and second semester to be honors. They'll get the GPA boost from an honors Algebra 2 course, and it'll change their first semester's grades. So now that we have an understanding of what this top section of the skill table roughly represents, these being the semester 1 and semester 2 grades, and these sections being the chapters of material that we go over in the course, I now want to be going over what do the scores mean. The 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.9, 3.5, and 2.5, and the dash that you see in the row right below it that are color coded. So tests are graded per skill rather than a cumulative total. This allows for you and me to have a more informative conversation about what students fail to understand rather than average scores. Typically, traditionally, in most Algebra 2 classes, as well as most classes, is when a student gets a test score back, they say, I got a 72%, I got an 85%. They give an overall percentage, or they might give it as a point value, got 85 points. But the problem with that kind of conversation is it doesn't really showcase what the student does and does not know from the test at hand. All that you know is that they got roughly 85-ish% of the material understood, but that doesn't really detail what concepts they don't. So instead, what we're doing here is we're grading it skill by skill. So when you say that you got a 4 on a skill, that tells you something different than I got a 2 on this next skill. Those are two different values and they have two different meanings, and that gives us a much better leverage in terms of conversations we can have on what it is that we do and do not understand and what we do and do not need to make up to improve our grade. So first, Students can earn the following scores. The traditional ones are a score of a 1, which represents a general lack of understanding. This could be showcased by turning in a test blank, or it could be shown by turning in a test question and writing an essay during a math problem. Or it could be that they just are trying to answer something I'm not asking. So, 1 does not necessarily represent that they don't know anything, it's that they don't really understand how to showcase what it is that I'm asking, or maybe they're misinterpreting the instructions that I'm giving. A 2 represents surface level comprehension. They kind of know how to start the problem a little bit. They know how to go into it with a good bit of detail, but they're making a lot of arithmetic errors. They're making a lot of conceptual errors. They're missing key points and key content. A 3 can represent general comprehension with some advanced variation. So they'll know roughly what to do, but if I give them some nuance, some unique way of presenting the content, they might struggle in the details. A 4 represents necessary mastery of the skill. Doesn't mean that the problem is perfect, there still might be some errors present, but it does showcase that the content that this skill was primarily focusing on that is new to their knowledge base, that is something that they have shown mastery over at an Algebra 2 level. There are a few special values that I like to highlight because they can cause some confusion sometimes. The first one being a zero point 0.9. A zero point 0.9 is when a student was not there for the test or did not take the test. Now, the problem with the table is if I leave that test blank, those sections blank, the grade will actually calculate as if they never took the test at all and as if it's never going to positively or negatively impact the score. So, for example, if a student just took the chapter 1 test and was gone for every other test for the rest of the year, if I left those blank, it would show as they have an A because they did really well on chapter 1 test. I need a way of showcasing, specifically towards the end of the semester, that their grade, if they do not make up those missing tests, is not as it would appear if I just left them blank. So zero point 0.9 is a way to roughly showcase what their grade would be if they did not make up the test, because I'd have to turn them into ones, but it differentiates itself enough from a 1, which showcases that they took the test and they showed very little or a general lack of understanding. So I needed a way to distinguish that, and that's how I use the zero point 0.9. A 2.5 and a 3.5 roughly mean the same thing, which is that the student took the test and then they came in and did retakes. A 2.5 is a student that initially scored a 1 on that specific skill from the test, the original test, came in and did a retake and got an improvement. So their score went from a 1 to a 2.5. A 3.5 comes from a student who has taken the test originally and scored either a 2 or a 3 on the original test, but then came and did the retake and now it has improved to a 3.5. Lastly, there is a dash. A dash could mean a lot of things, but the general idea is it's going to represent a skill that has or will be skipped and not counted towards a grade. There are some times in the year where we run a little short on time, or for whatever reason, there's a specific skill that we need to skip and should not count positively or negatively towards a grade. But I also don't want to leave it blank, showcasing that I might have skipped it or forgotten about it. I needed a symbol to showcase that I know it's not going to be counted towards a grade, and that's what a dash is for. It will not positively or negatively impact their grade, and it's a placeholder to let you know that it's not empty because it hasn't been taken. It's empty because it never will be taken. Now that we understand all of those scores and what they mean, I want to talk about one of the things that you will have active agency with in terms of strategically thinking about how you might want to do retakes to improve your grade. And that is going to be the bottom row. Now, if you notice, it's mostly empty. This is where you can actually type in your own score. So the top row represents the actual scores that they do currently have. These cannot be edited, but this is a row that you all have editing access to. So if you have, for in this case, a B plus, and you want to turn it into an A, what you can do is you can copy these scores, paste them in this row, and then start fiddling around with the numbers to figure out what it is you need to retake to earn the desired grade. These two values, which represents the semester 1 and semester 2 grades, have script written in them, the same script that's written here, that will auto calculate your grade based upon what you throw in here. Now, the one bit of feedback that I do want to give you, because it it has been an issue in the past, is if you wanted to make up 0.04, so you're making up this one, you're going to turn it into a 2.5, do not just write the 2.5 here. You need to fill in this entire row with these scores. If you just throw it in here, it's going to act as if the only score in the grade is that one score. So you need to fill out the entire row and then do the adjustments. So now that we know how to read the table and determine how our grade is calculated, and we also know how to throw in our own theoretical grades, let's start discussing what tools we have available for students to be able to study and get ready for those retakes that they can take during Flex. So every skill section, like the 0.01 right here, represents a hyperlink that will take you to a digital printout of the skill with a write up of the objective, the outcomes represented, practice problems, as well as a link or QR code to my YouTube channel where I have all of my lectures and notes so students can use this to study and prepare for their tests and retakes. So, again, if the student took the chapter 0 test and they did not understand 0.01, they scored a 1 or a 2 or maybe even a 3, and they want to come in and do retakes on it, one of the things I suggest is you click on 0.01 from the table. It'll pop up this little preview of the document, and when you select it, it will open up a Google Doc. All of my assignments look like this. They will say the heading of the skill, they will give an objective, they will tell you what outcome it is attached to, and then they'll give you a section on the front that's just for your notes, because this is typically what we print out in class. If there's graphing involved, I will have graphs on there as well. And the very bottom right, there's going to be two things. There's going to be a link, tinyurl.com/dtechesilva. That or the QR code, because remember a lot of these are printed out, those will take you to my YouTube page. So if a student looks at the practice problems and really does not understand how to do any of these, they can go to my YouTube link and then watch the lesson with subtitles. They can pause the video, they can speed it up if I'm talking too slow, they can slow it down if I'm talking too fast, and they can gather the information at their own pace. So this is one of the many resources that they can use to study outside of my classroom to help gather the necessary information and retain this information so that when they come in for retakes during Flex, they can understand the material without necessarily coming to my Flex for one-on-one peer-to-peer support from me or fellow students. The last thing I want to go over is something that you'll find to the very, very, very far right of the table. Most students and parents do not necessarily need to look here, but it is here in case you want to go into a deeper dive. And that is looking at the actual outcomes for the Algebra 2 course. So at the very end of the table, I've also provided students performance trackers on each individual outcome. The outcomes are color coded to match the colors of the chapters they are connected with. So for example, outcome A is kind of in this pinkish color. That's chapters 0 and 1. Outcome B, which is in a light blue, that is chapters 2 and 3. Outcome C is in orange, that's chapters 4 and 5. That is typically where we end the first semester. Outcome D in this mint green is chapters 6, 7, and 8. This is the beginning of second semester. E is in red. You might notice it is unique in the fact that it is a single chapter. F, which is in yellow, that is also a single chapter. It's chapter 10. And then TH stands for Trig Honors because this also has an honors embedded curriculum if you want to strive for honors. That is chapters 11 and 12, which I talked about earlier. In order to earn honors credit, you have to finish chapters 11 and 12, which I do make time for in class during the school year. So each of these letters is hyperlinked to the individual description of that specific outcome, which is on my arc of learning. So if you or a student or anyone wants to go into an explicit deep dive as to what content you need to make up to earn a specific outcome score to get an exact value on your semester 1 or semester 2 grade, it is calculated based upon these values. Finally, again, the key takeaways after this video you should understand the skill table is where students' grades live. This is where their grade is. 2. The scores update in real time and represent a student's current grade. 3. Every section of every test can be retaken an infinite number of times until the end of the semester. 4. Everything in the top row that is underlined is a hyperlink to a tool or a resource. 5. The bottom row is where you can input your own theoretical scores. That's where you have editing rights to plug in your own values to determine and strategize what you need to work on. And then 6, outcome scores can be seen on the far right side of the table. Again, if you have any questions, please email me at esilva@dtechhs.org. I'd be more than happy to talk to each and every one of you.